Viewers and subscribers, welcome back to Beating the Press podcast. I am your host, Rafa. Now, coming up in today's podcast, we're going to be reviewing the weekend's action of football over there in the EPL. Arsenal being held 1-1 by Brighton, and of course, that big victory by Liverpool 3-0 over Manchester United. Now, joining me this evening to review these matches and to talk some EPL football, we have returning to the podcast, Christoph.
Good to be back again, viewers.
Yes, Christoph, let's kick the ball off over there at the Emirates. 10-man Arsenal almost being beaten by a Brighton team which came to play. Talk to us, Christoph. What went on in that game and was that red card even warranted?
Arsenal was not almost beaten by Brighton. Arsenal was defeated by the referee and his poor officiating of the game. Inconsistent and just bad. Clearly, the referee had some grudge against Arsenal or something because the amount of poor decisions that he made. Had he been consistent throughout the game, he gave Rice a second yellow for kicking the ball away, but I saw Neto kicking the ball away in the first half and nothing came of it. So I don't understand what was the reasoning there. And the FA can talk about protecting referees and whatever, but this is a clear indication that they don't really care to me because something like that can't be happening and that red card affected the game. It was not warranted. The referee, I don't know, maybe it was poor mad or something, but it was just
Well,
poor.
well, I mean,
We've seen
the,
this all from the beginning of the league so far. We saw poor decisions in the first game against Arsenal. We saw them in the second game. All right. I know we've seen it in the third game, costing Arsenal some points because Brighton was not in the game until that red card came.
Definitely a questionable decision there from the referee. As you said, the consistency was probably lacking in this one. But I mean, teams have to deal with situations like these,
No,
Christoph. I mean,
these are not things
we
that
can't do
teams
anything
should be.
about that.
No, no, no. Very poor officiating should not be happening at this level at the first place.
Well, I mean, it does happen.
If you cannot be consistent, you should not be refereeing this level at any at all.
It's the same referees we saw in previous games and on prior occasions. And of course, VAR is there also to
No,
assist, but
no. This is
it's just
the
parts and parcels of the
this
game we
is
have to
so
accept and
so.
deal with.
Why did that the VAR say something about it? Because I mean, Rice kicked away the ball, but Rice was also kicked by the player. Yeah, he did not receive any card for that.
Well, that's where the consistency
If there
comes
was
in.
some consistency in the game, Brighton would have received 2 red cards.
Well, I can agree with you in terms of the consistency for sure, and Arsenal will have their say in court. But at the end of the day, it's not gonna change
Right.
the
There
result.
is there is literally nothing to talk about that game aside from the referee.
Well, I mean, we did see some decent football. I mean, being played by Arsenal before the card, and of course, Brighton taking full advantage of that numerical, superiority in numbers and really finding that equalizer and possibly could have found the winner. But I mean, Arsenal dug in and came away with a draw. So yes, definitely, I mean, that game was marred by what one could consider a poor refereeing decision. But possibly at the end of the season and looking back, Christoph, it could have been a point gain versus 3 loss.
What?
It could be a point gained in that Arsenal did not
That
lose the game
that
versus
match
completely losing 3.
that match was in Arsenal hands until the referee went and did stupidness.
Well, again,
And
it's not the first.
it's the type of
And
decision that must see some punishment.
yeah, but any punishment is not gonna result in Arsenal getting back points. That's the
No,
point I'm making.
it doesn't matter. But seeing that the referee get punished, we will hopefully it will show the other referees that you can't be doing foolishness. And as such, we'll
Well,
see more consistent.
one would hope, and one would anticipate that some level of consistency would be there. But I mean, it's not the first time we've seen this in games. I mean, Liverpool suffered that last season. And at the end of the day, we could not really use that as any excuse.
We spoke about it last season. A season is
So,
gone. They've
teams
had the
go through
summer.
these things.
The FA would have had words with the referees or whatever. You have words at the beginning of the season. Clearly, they have made some poor decisions in selecting these officials for games. Because for the very first week, we saw referees ruling out goals that could have won games. The very first, very game week one. So I don't know. We saw fouls against Arsenal in first game week, and no cards being given out. So I don't know. Either the FA has something against Arsenal or the referees have something against Arsenal at the moment.
Well, time will tell. Time is definitely the master. And I mean, this one ending in a 1-1 draw and points lost for Arsenal there. I mean,
I
at the
tell
end
you
of the
what,
day, we
maybe if we had 115 charges against us, we would be relegated by now. You know,
well, the politics of the football is always present, and international break coming up, which should simmer
maybe there's some Saudi money
feelings,
changing,
but
exchanging hands around there.
all these are all possibilities. We never can tell what's going on behind the scenes. We watch on a week to week basis and we see the football out there on the weekend. But in terms of behind the scenes happening, the boardroom, etc., that one is beyond our control. But as I said, good result for Brighton in my estimation, but probably not the result Arsenal was looking for in their case. And that's their first 2 points drop this season. Brighton uh, would feel a bit relieved to have gotten a point and possibly a little disappointed not to have gotten all three. But it is what it is. But lots more games and another big game, Christoph, which took place over the weekend that has everyone talking. Is Liverpool taking care of business versus Manchester United? Again, we previewed that game, and my call for that game was absolutely spot on. I called it 3-0, and 3-0 it was. Yourself and Sir Cole was anticipating some sort of scoring draw, but that was not the case. It was a total demolition job by Slot and his Liverpool team. Give us your thoughts on that game, Christoph. What did you see in that one from either team?
Well, like I said, I had predicted that draw. Sir Cole had predicted that draw, and when we did the show, the preview show, that is what I saw. But um, up until the press conference with Eric Ten Hag, I believe that a draw would probably be the case until Ten Hag opened his mouth at that press conference and said that Manchester United was the second most successful team over the last 3 years, and then I realized that this dude does not know what the heck he is doing there. Saying that you're the most successful team because you managed to win a Carling Cup and a FA Cup is just ridiculous. He seems to have forgotten that Liverpool has won the league. Arsenal has won FA Cups in that time period as well, and has beaten City on a number of occasions. We've only seen Manu crumpling like a wet paper bag at the moment. But it seems to me for the game itself, Manu probably needs to permanently drop Casemiro because he's clearly detrimental in that midfield role that he's playing at the
Well,
moment. And
he's a very decorated player. You're talking about lots of experience. I
I don't
mean,
I don't know
is
if it's a case where he needs some support in the midfield to be effective or what, or it's a case where the system at United just does not suit his playing style, his skill set. But whatever the reason is for right now, Casemiro is not going to be the answer for Man United. He's going to be more detrimental, more harmful to the team than not. And Ten Hag really needs to think about dropping some of these big names that keep playing week in, week out and are not performing, not producing any goods, any results, not doing anything on the pitch. So I don't know. As for Liverpool, what I saw was a very cool, calm, and measured performance. You see shades of Klopp in the way that they're playing, they're attacking, but there is a sort of uh, calmness, a reservedness, specifically at the back. Whereas with Klopp, you would see a lot of players going forward, the fullbacks going forward, midfielders going forward. We see where under Slot, he is holding three players back to cover that defense and to counter. not to counter, to neutralize the counter attack that posed a big threat to Liverpool last season. And going forward, it will be interesting to see how this works out against better opposition than Manchester United.
Yeah, definitely. It's hard to use United as any sort of credible measuring stick, in all honesty. Again, I said slot tactics will be tested when things are not going well. So I'd love to see Liverpool, for example, go behind. We know that last season, that was one of the hallmark characteristic of Klopp final year in charge. Liverpool seemed always to concede the first goal, and then the team was always chasing the game. Oftentimes they did overcome, but that's not necessarily the way you want to start a match by conceding the first goal. Thus far this season, we've seen a stark improvement defensively. 3 games and still no goals conceded. So that's 3 clean sheets on the bounce for this slot team. So I would agree with you that there is a bit more calmness, less chaotic attacking, and then players are then out of position in terms of transitioning. And that is oftentimes where Liverpool was hurt or beaten last season, in that counter attack. So definitely that's a clear distinction between the two managers. Gravenberch and McAllister are playing behind the ball, and then of course he's attacking with Soberslai, Salah, that front four, pretty much Jota and Diaz. And it was those front four which got the bulk of the creative juices flowing, creating in terms of providing assists and also scoring. Diaz, of course, getting a brace there, and then of course Salah providing those 2 assists, and then Salah himself getting on the score sheet as well. Soberslai providing that assist for that third goal for Salah. So it's definitely a good result versus this Manchester United team, especially away from home. And as I said, the law of averages had to tell Christoph Liverpool totally dominated Manchester United last season in those 2 games at Old Trafford, but yet they walked away with no points, or they walked away with a draw. And it was a similar situation this time around. However, Liverpool was just more clinical in front of goal. And that is what we're going to probably be seeing from this team. Hopefully, that once they get their chances, they'll definitely take their chances. But definitely a game that the Manchester United fans have to look at and really ask themselves, has this team really progressed under Ten Hag? Yes, 2 trophies has been won in the last 2 seasons, but have the team progressed? I mean, these trophies are cups, so these are one-off games. And when it comes to the league is built on consistency. And that's what we have been seeing from United, that inconsistency in the league. Hence, they finishing in mid-table last season. And I see no difference thus far in these first 3 games. Uh, Inconsistency again, patterns of play missing. Granted, they did create a couple late chances, in all honesty, Christoph, and probably should have punished Liverpool. Zerkski being one of the most uh you know, one of those players which had the opportunity to really breach this Liverpool defense, but Alisson came to the rescue on 1 or 2 occasions. But he had the most clear-cut chance late in the game, of course. Pretty much after the game was all wrapped up, Liverpool leading 3-0 and cruising, but he did have an opportunity to get on the score sheet on a couple of occasions. So it's not all doom and gloom, in my opinion, for this Manchester United team, and they should be able to bounce back versus Southampton in their next fixture, Crystal. And I'm also hoping they will bounce back and keep Ten Hag in the job, in my opinion. To me, he's not the answer, but many Manchester United fans think he is. So I'm all for them. I'm backing them. Keep Ten Hag in the job, and we'll see where it goes. What says you?
Um, I agree. From an Arsenal fan point of view, I leave Ten Hag in charge. Poor results abound. I'm okay with them continuing inconsistently at the moment.
Indeed, indeed. And, at this point in time, there is really no one to blame. I mean, Ten Hag has definitely spent quite a bit in the transfer market. He has gotten his players who he, in my opinion, has hand selected. These are players he would have either coached before or have a level of familiarity with. So if there was any question that, hey, the board at Manchester United is giving Ten Hag players, I would dispel those rumors or that sort of thinking, because the players he has brought in are players he has either worked with before or he is intimately familiar with. One or two players may be questionable, for example, maybe a Mount, but again, we see a connection in the Dutch league when Mount was playing over there in the Eredivisie. So there is no question in my mind that Ten Hag is getting the players that he desires. So there is really no excuse. He has had enough transfer windows to really put his imprint on this team. And the question has to be asked, how long do you need for us to see your pattern of play taking shape? How long is long enough? I mean, we see coaches like Slot coming in and he has, for want of a better word, slotted in nicely. I mean, you can already see what he has brought to the Liverpool team in terms of his tactical approach to the game. And this was a classic example where he devised a tactical plan to nullify Manchester United to a large extent, and the plan seemed to be have worked perfectly. Pretty much pressing with the front four players, or the front three, and Soboslai, and then of course Gravenberch and McAllister sitting in behind in that midfield. And really, the energy these players showed in that midfield was very credible, and that is what led to them pinching the ball from Casemiro, who was guilty on a number of occasions, and also pinching it off Menu, who was also guilty. And these defensive turnovers really led to spark the Liverpool attack, and that's where the goals came from. Quick turnover, quick attack, leading directly to goals. So the press, as you said, conservative, not as chaotic as that of Klopp, but obviously worked effectively. And it will probably take a little time for teams in the Premier League to work out this Liverpool team, to find the weaknesses of the system and then try to exploit. I mean, under Klopp, you could see that over the years, team figured them out that, hey, maybe a Trent Arnold-Alexander is a weakling. Let's attack down the Liverpool right side, or the midfield is a little weak, or this team is susceptible to counter attack. So let's soak up pressure and then hit them on the counter. So teams worked out the Klopp system after a period of time. It will take them a little time to assess the SLAT system and try to figure out the best approach to beating this Liverpool team. But so far, so good, in my opinion. And pretty much the team moves to the next big game. But lots of other results taking place over the weekend, Christoph. Were there any other matches that impressed you in any sort of way? We saw, for example, Newcastle getting the better of Spurs 2-1, even though watching that game, Spurs looked the more dominant and likely team to score. But it was Newcastle who came out way victorious.
I mean, to be fair, Spurs looked, better, but Spurs didn't score any goals in that game. So it doesn't really matter. Even the goal that they got was a one goal, so they didn't do anything. And like I said, it's what we come to expect from Spurs. It's like I said, the first season with Spurs, a manager always does well, but Spurs always peters off at the end of the season. The second season will be the real test to see how good that manager is.
Wow, well, definitely. Pochettino is in his second season, and as you say, the goals were missing, chances were created, but no one to really bury those chances. And it seems like Solanke is already being missed, that focal point, that number nine, which Spurs went out but now he is injured and he has missed the last two games. And he cannot come back fast enough for this Spurs team, because they really played well in terms of possession. However, at the end of the day, goals win matches, and that's what they were lacking in this game. Newcastle at home showed some good qualities, got two goals, and defended stoutly at times to really keep this Spurs team off the score sheet. Got a own goal there through Dan Burn, but that was as good as Spurs got. And again, Newcastle rolls on, maintaining their 100% record at home. That's now two wins for Newcastle. at home, while Spurs, having played their first game away to Leicester, played well, only to come away with a draw. And again, they played well versus Newcastle, only to come away with a loss. So definitely food for thought there for Spurs. Should definitely be hungry, and they definitely need Solanke to be back in that starting 11 and be firing on all cylinders in order to move up the table. Pretty football alone won't get the job done. But of course, Aston Villa versus Leicester, Christoph, that was another good game where we saw Aston Villa winning that one, 2 goals to 1.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's what we had predicted that Aston Villa would win that game. It's not quite the Leicester of old, and we know Aston Villa showed us last season that they have quality in their team, and the manager has shown what he can do. I mean, I might not like Emilio Martinez, but he is still a solid goalkeeper, and we know that.
I mean, isn't he an Arsenal man? Didn't Arsenal bring him up through the system?
Yeah, he did come up through the Arsenal system. Yes, he was. But I think I don't know if you would say went to the youth academy for maybe like a year and then came up through the reserves. Yeah, but
But was never really given that number one position, so to speak. Hence,
no, he wasn't given
almost
that.
similar to a Ramsdale type situation where Arsenal probably deemed him surplus to requirement.
The difference with somebody like a Ramsdale is that Ramsdale was bought to be the number one keeper. He played one season as that number one keeper, but I
Mm.
guess a number of high profile errors in a number of games where Arteta said, hey, let's go out and get somebody who
Oh,
can
so
be better.
Ramsdale would be more likened to a Leno then.
Yeah, Ramsdale, I would say is like a Brent Leno, where you're bought to be the first team, but after a while, probably not seen as good enough. So they
Mm.
replaced him. Martinez, for the longest time was a reserve keeper and then the backup keeper. Uh, in his final season at Arsenal, he was the starting keeper for the FA Cup, and Arsenal went to the finals and won, and they offered him a new contract, but he had declined. I think to my knowledge, he does not like Arsenal for some
Well,
reason.
I mean, he seemed to be doing quite well over there at Aston Villa. He has definitely found a new home, and of course, World Cup winner, Copa America winner, as well as bringing Aston Villa into the Champions League as well. And they got another victory versus a stubborn Leicester team. And of course, the Jamaican Leon Bailey, Christoph, picking up an injury, which should keep him out of international duties, having been called up by the new Jamaican coach. This is a big blow for the Jamaican team, I must say. And of course, Coach McLaren, who would have been taking charge of his first game. What's your take on that? Bailey just seemed to be rather injury prone.
I mean, that's not anything new. We've seen for a very long time that Bailey was injury prone. We saw it seems to be a trend with these players of Jamaican descent. Bailey, Raheem Sterling, Daniel Sturridge. Very Emil Smith Rowe, very injury prone players. Very strange.
Possibly genetics there, Christopher. I'm not sure. Or it's just possibly conditioning by the physios, nutrition. I mean, injuries are it's just bad luck at the end of the day. Sometimes you can't tell when you might get injured because this
But
was a very innocuous situation
i
for Bailey.
if I recall, Mason Greenwood has switched allegiances to Jamaica, so he I believe has gotten a call up as well.
No, not this time around. I don't believe the paperwork came in time, it seems, but I do hear along the grapevines that his allegiance should be with Jamaica at this point. Having had that court situation, I see no way for him back into the English setup or possibly even into the English footballing system. So, Jamaica World Cup 2026 being held in the USA, this is a prime opportunity for a player. This is probably the dream of many players to represent their country in a World Cup, and Jamaica is perfectly positioned, I would say, to give any player who is willing that opportunity to really go to a World Cup and represent Jamaica. So This is a good opportunity for a player like Mason Greenwood, in all honesty, and we'll see how that one pans out. But very sad situation there for Leon Bailey, not only for Aston Villa, but of course showcasing his talent for Jamaica also. But Aston Villa did manage to pull out a victory. Duran coming on again and really finding the back of the net. And I'm thinking Ole Watkins' place at his place in the team, Christoph, must be under threat, having missed two sitters versus Arsenal, and now Duran coming on and really showing him up by getting on the score sheet. Should Aston Villa drop Watkins, Christoph, and start Duran?
You know, I don't know if Duran is a super sub or he can do it. It's hard to tell this early in the game, but um they don't necessarily want to go and erode Ollie Watkins, confidence so early in the season. So I think they might persist a little bit longer. At least one more game to see, is this going to be a trend? Maybe it's a case where he hasn't gotten over the summer as yet, He, missed some training and so on. So he might be taking a while to get up to speed. Maybe he just needs a one goal to get going. Maybe they win a penalty, let him get it. He scores, he gets the confidence, and then he might be banging them in. But it's too early to say, I think.
Oh, so you're saying persist with Ole Watkins then?
I'm saying persist at least one more game. You can give him till the 65th minute, and then, he's not doing, he's not scoring the goals. He's been presented with opportunities, then you give him the hook, so to
Mm.
speak.
And speaking of strikers, Christoph, we see that man again. That man, Haaland, coming up with back-to-back hat trick. Taking care of business over there versus West Ham. Man City running away 3-1 winners. What more can we say about the striker, Christoph Haaland? Does he have any weaknesses? Is the question.
His weaknesses, I mean, we saw his weaknesses last 2 seasons.
Well, I mean,
If
the
your man Mark Haaland, Haaland, the way how Haaland plays for City is he does not get involved in the build-up play. So if you cut off his supply, he's basically just an extra player that is not doing anything. You can man mark him out of a game.
Oh, so why are we not seeing more teams doing that? I
That is a
mean,
question.
Rudiger gave them the blueprint in that
We,
Champions League
I don't
versus Real
know.
Madrid.
We saw, yeah, we've seen Rudiger do it 2 seasons in a row. We see Arsenal do it with William Saliba 2 seasons in a row. So, I couldn't say why maybe they don't feel like they have the quality. Or
Right.
it's just that these teams probably can't defend at the same level as a Real Madrid or an Arsenal. So City do still have other weapons that have the potential to
But
score. So
wouldn't you rather allow those other weapons to hurt you than if you know you have a nuclear weapon, which is Haaland, why are you going to allow City to set off that nuclear weapon? Why not allow a 9 millimeter to hurt you then?
I mean, I can't speak to the
If you
reasoning
understand what
of
I'm
these
saying,
teams.
he's the go-to guy for Man City. So if you lock him down, allow someone else to beat you. But these teams seem to have no answers for the man, the myth, and becoming a legend, which is Erling Haaland. I mean, that's no back-to-back hat tricks. I'm not sure if I've ever seen another striker in the EPL, to be honest, Christoph, which have scored back-to-back hat tricks. Yeah, I can't recall ever seen that feat being done. In all honesty, you may have hat tricks within the season, but having hat tricks one behind the other, I can't recall any other player really doing that since I've been watching the EPL. So I mean, credit must be given where credit is due. You know the weapons that's there, and yet you pretty much can't stop it. So hats off to Man City, and of course they are what, early leaders in the league. Early league leaders, so to speak. But the Man City train keeps rolling, it seems.
I mean, Harry Kane has scored back-to-back hat-tricks in the Premier League.
Mm, okay.
So
Well,
I believe only Harry Kane and Erling Haaland has done it so far.
definitely he is in quality class there. Kane is definitely a big striker. But what can we say about Chelsea, Christoph, having demolished Wolves in their previous game? No, they are held to a draw by Crystal Palace. Talk to us about that one. Is it the inconsistency that we anticipated coming to the fore?
Again, too soon to say new manager. Rough. Well, it's not the same players. There's been a very somewhat big overhaul of the squad. Not necessarily seeing a system that I fully recognize as one's own. It looks similar to me to what they played last season. Only time will tell. But I mean, I feel like last week's game against Fulham might have been a one. Not Fulham. Who was it?
Wolves.
Wolves against Wolves might have been a one-off. We don't know as yet. You know, we can't use that one game to judge them so far. Before that game, we saw them have back-to-back losses. Then they come, they get a big win. Now it's them dry. It's too early to say. Personally, I think they'll be inconsistent for the majority of the season. But again, too early to say. But
Ah,
what we can
definitely.
say is it's obvious that Cole Palmer will is looking to be a big influence again this season.
I must concur. I must concur. Another assist there for Cole Palmer. And I tend to agree with you. I think this Chelsea team will be rather inconsistent throughout the season. Almost unpredictable. You probably won't be able to tell what you will get from them game to game. So maybe one game you see a 6-0 performance, and then the next week you're seeing them draw with a Crystal Palace 1-1. So that inconsistency has already started to show. And for me, I anticipate that this will continue throughout the season as well. And, their main go-to guy, their main source of offensive quality seem to be that man again, Cole Palmer, and his quality is undeniable. But for me, Christoph, my game of the week, in all honesty, is that game, Everton versus Bournemouth. Everton was leading 2-0 up to the 83rd minute, only to see Bournemouth rally and win that game 3 games to 2. There was a chorus of boos at the end of that one for Everton. Are we looking at a relegation team right now?
Um, I would say it's probably still too early to say if they are relegation or not. But I see three losses in three for them so far.
That's right.
Um,
And this one look like their
you are
first win.
tempted.
They look as if they had this game in the palm of their hands,
You
only to give
are
it away at the death.
you are tempted to say that they are a relegation team, but Southampton also hasn't won anything, and Wolves only has one point, which is a draw. And there are a number of teams, in that relegation zone. From even Manchester United is barely out of that relegation zone, to be honest.
I mean, when
Um,
you look at the team itself, there are a number of first-time EPL players. We know that they had to sell off some of their better quality players. Players like Onana, for example, he was a big part of that midfield. And Calvert-Lewin, injury prone, coming off injuries, not the most prolific of strikers. And Everton themselves, just their style of play under Dyche, their last season was really built on defensive solidarity. But this season, they have been conceding goals left, right, and center. And the most recent, giving up 3 goals in 7 minutes, technically, uh, to a Bournemouth team which look battered and beaten up to the 83rd minute. And I thought Everton had this game wrapped up and was just looking to see it out. But Bournemouth had other ideas, other plans, and it would have been a very disappointing loss. Not only did they lose 3 points, but they lost a number of fans. As I said, there was a chorus of boos at the end of the game, but things are not looking pretty over there at Everton.
I mean, it's looking very bleak. I don't think they'll take action right now as it comes to whether or not they replace the manager. I think they'll probably wait at least three more game weeks for us to kind of see where everybody is at. And then if Everton is still, in that relegation battle, I think they'll take some action to probably replace the manager.
That is indeed a question. That is indeed a question. The manager has been given very little to work with, in all honesty, and one must take their hats off to the fact that not only did Everton lose a number of points being deducted from them last season, but they still managed to stave off relegation. And if not for those points being deducted, they would have been a comfortable mid-table team. However, this season may be a different ball game with the loss of a number of quality players, not being able to dip into the transfer market to replace those players. It's gonna be hard to see where this team goes from here. And this is another loss which would not add to that any at all, and it's just disappointment all around. But Christoph, any final thoughts from you in terms of what you saw this weekend? Were there any standouts? What stood out for you? What are your thoughts?
Um, the standout for me was the level of officiating that we've seen so far. Over the weekend, definitely, but since the league has started and there must be some change going forward if you want to claim that the Premier League is the best league in the world, blah, blah, blah. The FA can say whatever they want, but with this level of poor officiating that is affecting the result of games, something must be done.
Indeed, I concur. Something must be done. I'm not sure what will change. Oftentimes, each year, we definitely see some high-profile errors being made, and it really does cost team points in the long run. And of course, the EPL is built on money and where you finish in the league as well as championships. So we can't have officials determining the outcomes of game in one form of or another. So definitely, some improvement in the officiating needs to come to the fore,
Major
but of
improvement, major improvement needed.
major improvement is the call for
Because
the English FA.
last season we saw people go, referees going over to the VAR, both looking at the replay and still getting the decision wrong. So some major
Indeed.
improvements needed.
Lots to change there in terms of officiating, lots to change. But of course, City remains unbeaten. Liverpool remains unbeaten also. Those are the two teams which are leading the pack currently. City sits on top of the league, having a better goal difference or having scored more goals than Liverpool. And it's early in the
Well,
season, the season, the
to
table
be
really doesn't
to
start.
be fair, the top five are all unbeaten.
Well, well, haven't lost or haven't dropped any points is a better characterization, of Liverpool and Man City. They haven't dropped any points thus far, and hopefully, as a Liverpool fan, we hope that will continue as long as possible. But there you have it, viewers and subscribers. Thank you again for tuning in to us here on Beating the Press podcast. Thanks again, Christoph, for coming through and really sharing some passionate opinions and really giving it to the referees on this occasion. But viewers and subscribers, continue to help us to grow by, of course, sharing, liking, and of course, leaving your comments. But until next time, this is Rafa signing off.